any pressure from the 4 counties to?
You know, I can't speak for the other task force. FPL has a member that sits on our task force, and the bigger push so far from the task force has been feed-in tariff. That what FPL is doing now is building the largest solar array in DeSoto County. And the cost of transmitting that kind of power, because it's generated in such volume around the state, what we have been questioning is, if you look at the European model of feed-in tariff, and that is, in essence, every home, every business, every parking lot with a shade structure built over it becomes its own, in essence, power plant. It generates its own power. There is no extra need for new transmissions lines. And the way that it works in Europe and the way that it will be working in Gainesville, which is perfect feed-in tariff.
Well, they did a bond issue on it, right?
They own their utilities, so they were able to do that. And I think that was the pressure in Fort Lauderdale was, you have an opportunity to go in a whole another direction because you have a publicly owned utility, the opportunity to have one. And what happens is that as more and more folks are generating their own energy, they're drawing less from the grid, so there's less emissions. And that is something that FPL in multiple presentations and discussions at the climate task force level have completely resisted and are not entertaining in any way. They will not even consider feed-in tariffs. They claim that it's too unstable, that they need to be able to rely on X amount of kilowatt generation, and that it's coming from homeowners, it's not enough. But yet you look at Europe and you'll see virtually, if you look at aerial photographs of Germany, for example, every roof is covered in a solar panel. And the way that they pay for it is because you are paid, the way FPL works it now is if you are generating your own solar or your own power, they give you a credit per kilowatt hour, and it's set up front. The way it works in Germany and the way it'll be working in Gainesville is you are paid for that kilowatt hour. So, for example, if you generated 100 kilowatts of power and you used 120, then you would have a credit, and that would make sense for you. But if, however, you're generating 100 and only using 90, then where's your incentive for that other 10%? You're never going to see the difference from that. What the feed-in tariff says is by being paid, you are now also creating your own revenue stream. That then can be used as the ability to pay off a loan, and that's how you get those systems paid for. So you don't need a ton of funding and incentives. Like the state of Florida was just given $130 million by the Department of Energy. The majority of that money is going into the state's solar incentives program. Wouldn't it be nice if we could also have other types, well, that's not bad to have incentives, wouldn't it be great if we had another way to incentivize solar than just simply to hope that we could get additional dollars from the feds? And the state's finances are in trouble, so that's not likely to happen.
I think California just passed a statewide requirement to allow feed-in tariffs to check on that.
Really?
Might be a model.
Yeah, well, we haven't gotten very far here.
Starts a whole new financing structure.
It does.
Energy banks.
Yeah, it would just be I think it's one of the most exciting things that certainly we've talked about on the climate change task force as far as energy. But we're not getting anywhere with that FPL.
Jim Wolfe, the former CIA director, told me that one way that the military can really be incentivized to generate its own power and not rely on the grid is the feed-in tariff. So that when alternative power generated on a military base exceeds the needs of the military base, then the excess is sold to the general grid.
Right.
And that's one thing that the Department of Defense is looking at, is where are they going to allow us to sell excess power that we might generate to the grid.
Right. Well, then think of it as a homeowner. You have even more incentive to remember to turn off that fan, because now you're talking about real money in your pocket.
Right.
You start finding ways of energy that you don't think you need.
Right. Instead of a sort of a distributed loss, it's a very specific game.
Right, that you can control by your own habits, and that's where I really think that's where we ought to be going. And unfortunately, Fort Lauderdale really missed an opportunity to at least advance that cause. I think they felt that it came along too late in the game, that they hadn't, maybe had they planned for it a little sooner, it might have been something they could entertain.
Mm-hmm. So do you ever foresee a day where we're going to have no landfill, where it's going to be recycled, reused, where we don't have the landfill?